Hi, I'm Christopher Hine, and today we're going to be talking about Kaiten Nage. Kaiten Nage is another one of the throws in Aikido that I feel like kind of gets messed up all the time, and there's a lot of confusion about what it is. The way it looks in the form is fine, but if you tried to apply it the way it looks in the form, you'll probably find it's really difficult. At the same time, I feel like it's a throw that kind of comes off in Randori and Jiawaza a fair amount, and so maybe you say, oh, well, it must be an easy technique, but it's not like the form, or the form is right and no one can do it right, and so that's why it comes off in Randori, it comes off wrong, you know? So there's all kinds of problems with the way we look at Kaiten Nage. It just means turn-causing throw, a throw that comes from going around. I'm going to provide my suggestions and set of answers for you for Kaiten Nage. I'm not saying that it's right. It's probably going to be off the book from a fair amount of what teachers have told you or you might tell your students. I'm not saying that it's right, but this has completely answered all of the questions I had about Kaiten Nage. So by looking at Kaiten Nage this way, I've answered the problems that I had with it. So I'm going to go over those with Josh today. We're going to get him out here and we're going to go to work. Josh? All right, so let's talk about Kaiten Nage and what Kaiten Nage is. Kaiten means to go around. If you've ever eaten Kaiten sushi, that's a sushi restaurant where they have a little conveyor belt or maybe a bunch of little boats or something going in a circle, and they put the plate on there with sushi on it, and you pull the plate off if you want to eat it, and then there's a color chart on the wall that tells you how much that plate costs. So Kaiten just means to go around, right? So what does that mean in Aikido? Well, in Aikido, the form for Kaiten Nage, pretty consistently in most schools, looks like this, and I throw this guy and he flies away, and that's a Kaiten Nage. So Kaiten Nage might seem like a weird name for that throw. I've heard before that people say it's called Kaiten Nage because of that, because it makes you roll, and rolling is Kaiten. And so then that would make sense, like, oh, it makes them do a roll. But how does that really distinguish it from a lot of other throws in Aikido that make people take rolls? So a lot of things in Aikido make people take a roll, so how come that one? Well, you could argue that it's specifically because it puts their head down to the ground and they literally have to take a roll or smash their face. Okay, so that's reasonable. I think there's really a different kind of reason that we call it Kaiten, and I'll show that in just a second. But in the form, one of the problems we have, and so let's just do Shomanuchi, that's real easy. So I go from here to here, I draw this back, I catch his head, and I do the throw. Okay, one of the problems you're going to have is his head is going to be very difficult to push down. So if you're trying to push his head down, that's going to be hard. Now, I know in the Iwama system, there's a thing about this, about you should hold the head and not the neck, because if you hold the head, it's harder, right? So meaning if I tried to grab Josh's neck, just stand up for me. Okay. If I tried to grab Josh's neck and push him down, Josh can resist that pretty easy. However, if I go to the top of his head, he wants to resist that less because it's difficult on his neck. So I know that there are conventions talking about little tricks to get their head to go down. But when I started having more success with Kaiten Nage, I realized that I don't want to make their head go down. They make their head go down, and I just take advantage of it. And this is like a lot of my Aikido, that I realized there is a situation created where he'll want to do something, and my job is to capitalize upon that instead of trying to force him to do that. So instead of trying to force this guy to do it, there are situations where he will put his head down. Now, those same situations will actually also create a situation like this, which is much like a Kaiten. So yes, he's probably going to do a roll out of it, but also it's going to create a Kaiten situation. Let me explain. Let's say we were in Katate, okay? And I use triangle to get out. Boom. Okay. Now, Josh can't, unless he's way more powerful than me, come in on this line, right? Because my hand's in the way, okay? So going under that is very reasonable, and you see this in wrestling and all kinds of styles. Now, if he goes low and I go low, he'll go lower and I'll go lower, and he'll go lower and I'll go lower. Now look at what just happened. Now if I stay right here when Josh does that, you see how my leg's available to him? He's going to get my legs, he's going to pull them out from under me. However, if when he goes to grab that leg, I turn like this, we notice what starts to happen. A really, really effortless Kaiten Nage. We're Kaitening in this way, not in this way. And I'm not saying that the original definition, because, you know, Zimpo Kaiten is a forward roll, that makes sense with this. But if you think about the fact of the struggle that's happening like this, and then when we start to plug it into our context, it'll make a lot more sense. So understand that I'm always trying to get over here, and then ideally back here. Now, if he's chasing me around that and I'm putting my hand in his way as he's chasing me around that, that throw comes off with me doing almost nothing, right? So Kaiten Nage to me is our basic defense for low leg attacks, and it comes off that way for mainly two parts. One is from any kind of wide attack, I want to put something in the middle so he can't just enter in there. And then two, I'm going to try and keep my space here. Now, as he comes into that, I'm going to move myself out and out and out until eventually we get a Kaiten Nage out of that, right? So the Kaiten Nage comes because he keeps pushing in and I won't let him come up. Now, if he chose to come up, that'd be fine. We'd do a different throw. Tons of stuff like Sumio-toshi come off of that immediately, right? So meaning if we're down like this and Josh decides, oh, I want to come up, boom, Sumio-toshi comes in. There's all kinds of other throws, Kokyunage, all kinds of stuff can happen in that. But understanding that concept of the Kaiten Nage happens because they're trying to get into that space and you won't let them. And so they're going under to circumvent that. So they're getting lower and lower and lower and charging in at you. We get this spinning, spiraling kind of thing that creates our Kaiten Nage throw. So that's the way I personally think about Kaiten Nage coming off. And I think of the Kaiten happening more this way than this way, although one doesn't cancel out the other. That's why. It's full of Kaiten. It's full of this turning around kind of energy. And I think the most important Kaiten is I'm always trying to get out and they're always chasing me, and that's what's making this throw happen. So that's the context for Kaiten Nage. So that's the way I explain Kaiten Nage. It might be fairly different from the way it's explained in your school, and I'm not saying my way's right, but it just answers all of my questions. When I look at Kaiten Nage that way, I don't have questions about it anymore. So if that helps you, I hope it does actually help you. Yeah. So anyways, I'm Christopher Hine, this is Joshua T, and my Salon of McDaniel's right behind that center one right now. We'll see you guys in the next video.